Yes, sir. Jungkook pushed open the heavy glass doors of the complex, stepping into the heated, quiet sanctuary of the bookstore lobby. The ambient smell of roasted coffee beans, fresh paper, and wooden shelves washed over him. He unbuttoned his coat, leaning his back against a wide marble pillar near the children's section, rubbing the bridge of his nose to soothe his tired eyes. He lowered his hand and let out a long, quiet sigh. And then a small, sudden noise caught his attention. Just a few paces away, near a low wooden reading table, a small stuffed toy, a well worn plush rabbit with one slightly frayed ear, had slipped from a child's coat pocket, tumbling onto the polished hardwood floor right near Jungkook's polished leather shoes. Jungkook looked down. He paused, looking at the worn little rabbit. With a soft, instinctive movement, he bent down, his long fingers picking up the soft toy. Oh, my rabbit! A high pitched, clear young voice exclaimed. Jungkook straightened up, turning his head. Stepping out from behind the low reading table was a 5-year-old boy. The child was wearing a bright yellow bear beanie, a soft blue winter jacket, and carried himself with a bright, earnest energy. Jungkook froze. The air seemed to leave his lungs in a single, violent rush. The child stepped closer, stopping just 3 feet away, looking up at Jungkook with wide, sparkling dark eyes. The boy tilted his head slightly to the left, a subtle, distinct physical habit, and scrunched his nose with a bright, toothy grin that revealed two prominent front bunny teeth. Jungkook felt his entire world violently tilt on its axis. His heart slammed against his ribs with a force so sudden and overwhelming that his knees nearly buckled beneath him. He was looking at a mirror. The exact same eyes, the same nose, the same gentle curve of the chin, and that unmistakable bunny tooth smile. Thank you, mister, the little boy said politely, reaching out his small gloved hands to take the stuffed rabbit. I dropped him by mistake. Jungkook couldn't speak. His throat felt as though it had been clamped shut by an invisible hand. He stared at the child, his vision trembling, his hand shaking uncontrollably as he handed the plush rabbit back into the boy's small grip. What? What is your name? Jungkook choked out, his voice cracking, barely audible over the soft background music of the store. The little boy hugged his plush rabbit against his blue jacket, offering another wide, innocent smile. My name is Cookie, the child announced proudly. Cookie. The word struck Jungkook like a thunderbolt. 5 years of agonizing grief, of sleepless nights, of unanswered questions, and buried pain surged to the surface in a single terrifying wave. His chest heaved as he dropped to one knee in the middle of the bookstore floor, reaching out with a trembling hand, his fingers stopping just inches from the boy's cheek, afraid that if he touched him, the child would dissolve like a dream. Cookie? Jungkook whispered, tears instantly welling in his dark eyes, blurring his vision. Who? Who is your father? Where is your... Cookia! I told you not to wander off. A familiar, soft voice called out from around the corner of the bookshelf. Jungkook's breath stopped entirely. That voice. He would know that voice if he were deaf, if he were dying, if 100 years had passed. A second later, Taehyung stepped around the wooden display cabinet, carrying a small tote bag. Taehyung stopped dead in his tracks. The paper tote bag slid from Taehyung's limp fingers, hitting the floor with a soft thud. The color drained entirely from Taehyung's face, leaving him as pale as fresh snow. His large, dark eyes widened in sheer, unadulterated shock as he looked down at the scene before him. John Jungkook, dressed in a sharp executive suit, kneeling on the wooden floor, weeping silently, with his hand hovering over their 5-year-old son. For 5 agonizing seconds, the entire universe shrank down to the space between them. The chatter of the bookstore faded into total silence. Neither of them moved, neither of them breathed. Taehyung. Jungkook breathed, the name coming out as a broken, ragged sob. Jungkook slowly stood up from the floor, his tall frame shaking violently. He stared at the man standing 10 feet away, the man who had crushed his heart, called him a failure, abandoned him without a trace 5 years ago, and vanished into thin air. The man he had never stopped loving. Taehyung stepped back instinctively, a look of pure terror flashing across his features. His first impulse was to grab Cookie and run, to hide back in the darkness where he belonged. Appa? Little Cookie asked, looking back and forth between his pale, trembling father and the strange, crying man in the suit. Appa, what's wrong? Hearing the child call Taeyang Appa sent a violent shockwave through Jungkook's chest. The realization hit him with absolute brutal clarity. The age of the child, the features. The name is Cookie. Jungkook took a swift, commanding step forward, his eyes burning with a turbulent storm of grief, fury, confusion, and raw, unrestrained longing. He reached out, his long fingers wrapping tightly around Taehyung's wrist, a grip so firm, warm, and desperate that it grounded them both to the floor. You, Jungkook whispered, his voice trembling with 5 years of unshed tears as he looked directly into Taehyung's terrified eyes. You are not running away from me this time. Not again. The rain had begun to fall outside, a heavy grey downpour that hammered rhythmically against the tinted glass of the private lounge on the building's top floor. Jungkook had bypassed his assistant, cancelled his afternoon planning committee, and escorted Taehyung and little Cookie through a secure private elevator directly into his personal executive suite. He needed absolute privacy, a space far away from the noise of the city, where 5 years of silence could no longer protect the secret standing between them. Inside the quiet, spacious room, the air felt charged, thick with an overwhelming emotional gravity. Little Cookie sat on a soft plush leather sofa near the corner of the office, engrossed in a glass mug of warm chocolate milk and a set of architectural drawing pencils Jungkook's assistant had quickly brought up. The boy was happily tracing geometric shapes on a pad of paper, oblivious to the storm brewing across the room. A few yards away, near the floor-to-ceiling glass window overlooking the rain-slicked city, Taehyung stood motionless. He wore his trench coat tight around his shoulders, his hands tucked deep into his pockets to hide their violent trembling. He kept his eyes fixed firmly on the carpeted floor, refusing to look up. Jungkook stood right in front of him, his chest heaving with deep, uneven breaths. "Look at me," Jungkook demanded softly. His voice was laced with a terrifying mixture of raw heartbreak and restrained authority. Taehyung didn't move. "Taehyung, look at me!" Jungkook took a firm step closer, his long fingers reaching out to gently, yet firmly, grasp Taehyung's chin, tilting his face upward. When their eyes finally met, a sharp gasp caught in Taehyung's throat. Up close, the pain in Jungkook's dark eyes was blinding. Beneath the sharp, polished exterior of the successful CEO, Taehyung saw the raw, bleeding wound of the boy he had left behind 5 years ago. "Who is he?" Jungkook asked, his voice trembling as he gestured subtly toward the sofa where little Cookie sat. "Tell me the truth, Taehyung. Who is that child?" Taehyung swallowed hard, forcing his expression into a cold, distant mask, the same terrible mask he had worn on the night he walked out. "He's my son," Taehyung said, keeping his voice as flat and emotionless as possible. "His name is Cookie. That's all you need to know." "Your son?" Jungkook repeated, a bitter, breathless laugh escaping his lips. "He looks exactly like me, Taehyung. He has my eyes, my nose, my smile, my habits." Taehyung pulled his face away from Jungkook's touch, stepping back until his frame bumped against the cold glass window. "It doesn't matter whose child he is, Jungkook," Taehyung said, forcing a sharp edge into his tone. "He is my responsibility. I raised him alone. My life has nothing to do with you anymore." "Nothing to do with me?" Jungkook snapped, stepping forward again, closing the distance between them until there was barely an inch of air left. Tears spilled over his dark lashes, tracking down his cheeks. "You walked into our kitchen 5 years ago, told me I was a failure, smashed my heart to pieces, and vanished off the face of the earth. I spent months searching for you. I almost destroyed myself trying to figure out what I did wrong." Taehyung clenched his fists inside his coat pockets so hard his nails dug deep into his palms. The physical pain was nothing compared to the agony of hearing Jungkook's confession, but he held his ground. "You didn't do anything wrong," Taehyung said quietly, staring straight at Jungkook's chest. "I told you back then we wanted different things. I wanted a life that was stable and secure. You were chasing an uncertain dream." "Liar!" Jungkook choked out, his voice dropping into an agonizing whisper that broke Taehyung's heart into 1,000 pieces. You are lying to me, Kim Taehyung. You have been lying to me from the very beginning. Taehyung stiffened. I'm not lying. Then explain the child, Jungkook demanded, his hands grasping Taehyung's shoulders, shaking him gently. If you hated me, if you thought I was a failure, if you truly wanted to get rid of me, why would you keep my baby? Why would you fight through 5 years alone to raise him? Why would you name him after me? Taehyung shut his eyes tightly, tears finally betraying him and streaming down his face. Jungkook, please, stop. I looked at your hands when you took off your gloves earlier. Jungkook continued, his voice cracking with unbearable intensity. You're pale. You're far too thin. You look like someone who has carried a mountain on his back for years. What happened to you, Tae? Where did you go for 5 years? I went abroad. Taehyung sobbed softly, struggling to push Jungkook's hands away from his shoulders. I went to build a new life. That's all. Please, just let us go. You have your company now. You have Jung. You have a bright, beautiful future. Don't drag yourself back into the past. Jung? Jungkook asked, his brow furrowing deeply. What does Jung have to do with any of this? Taehyung wiped his eyes with a trembling hand, letting out a bitter, exhausted breath. I saw you too, 3 weeks ago, outside this very building. I saw how she looked at you, how you smiled at her, how she took care of you. I know she helped you build this company when I left you with nothing. She belongs in your life, Jungkook. She can give you the happiness you deserve. I won't ruin that for you. Jungkook stared at Taehyung in absolute, stunned silence. You, you saw us 3 weeks ago? Jungkook whispered softly, his hands falling from Taehyung's shoulders to linger gently against his wrists. You thought Jung and I were together? Taehyung looked away, his chest heaving with quiet, exhausted sobs. Aren't you? Jungkook closed his eyes, a single, broken sob bursting from his throat, not of anger, but of a profound, devastating clarity. He reached out, wrapping his arms around Taehyung's waist and pulling him tight against his chest before Taehyung could pull away. You idiot. Jungkook wept into the crook of Taehyung's neck, holding him so fiercely it felt as though he were trying to fuse their bodies back together. You absolute beautiful idiot. Jungkook, let me go. Jung is my business partner, there. Jungkook cried softly into his skin, his body shaking violently. Her family helped me secure my first corporate loan after you left, and she has been working as my chief advisor ever since. She is like a sister to me. I have never touched her. I have never loved anyone else. I have spent 5 long, empty years living like a ghost because the only person I ever wanted walked out that door. Taehyung went completely still in Jungkook's embrace. The world around him seemed to crumble into dust. The assumption he had carried for weeks, the self-sacrificing wall he had built to keep himself hidden, was instantly shattered into nothingness. No, Taeyang breathed, his voice barely audible. No, that's not. It's the truth, Jungkook said, pulling back just enough to frame Taeyang's face in both of his warm, trembling hands, forcing Taeyang to look into his tear-streaked eyes. I never moved on, Taeyang. I couldn't. My heart died the day you left. Jungkook's eyes swept over Taehyung's face, searching every line, every shadow, every trace of pain, until his gaze rested on the faint, fine line hidden along Taehyung's hairline. Now tell me, Jungkook whispered, his voice dripping with raw, unconditional love and desperate plea. Tell me what really happened 5 years ago. Tell me why you leave me, made me hate you. Taeyang looked into the eyes of the man he loved more than life itself. Taeyang dropped his forehead against Jungkook's shoulder and broke down completely. Tell me, Tae, Jungkook whispered softly, his thumb gently caressing the small of Taeyang's back. Please, no more lies. Taeyang closed his eyes tightly, leaning his entire weight into Jungkook's chest. The dam had burst. The iron resolve that had sustained him through years of sterile operating rooms, sleepless nights, and solitary parenting was completely gone. Slowly, hesitatingly, Taeyang pulled back just enough to look into Jungkook's eyes. His long fingers reached up, trembling as they touched the collar of his own dark sweater, gently pulling it down alongside his hairline on the left side of his head. There, pale and thin against his golden skin, lay a distinct 6-inch surgical scar running down toward the back of his ear. Jungkook's breath hitched violently. His eyes widened as he stared at the mark. He reached out with a trembling hand, his fingertips tracing the scar with a tenderness so profound it felt like a prayer. What is this? Jungkook choked out, a fresh wave of panic rising in his chest. Tae, what happened to you? 3 days before you brought those loan documents home, Taeyang began, his voice raspy, barely carrying above the sound of the rain. I collapsed on the bathroom floor. I had been having blinding headaches for months, but I thought it was just stress from working double shifts. Jungkook froze, his hand remaining still against Taeyang's scalp. I went to the hospital alone while you were out of town. Taeyang continued, tears spilling over his lashes and slipping down his cheeks. The doctor ran an MRI. They found an advanced brain tumor pressing against my frontal lobe. The air left Jungkook's lungs. His face turned ghost white. A brain tumor? The local surgeons told me my chances of survival here were less than 10%. Taeyang murmured, his voice cracking with the memory of that terrifying afternoon. They said the only hope was an aggressive experimental treatment program at a specialized oncology center in Geneva, Switzerland. But it required immediate high risk surgery and months of radiation. Jungkook stared at him in sheer horror. The dreadful, heartbreaking truth began to assemble itself in Jungkook's mind like shattering glass. You, Jungkook whispered, his voice trembling so violently he could barely form the words. That night, the loan, the things you said to me. If I told you I was dying? Taehyung sobbed, reaching up to clasp Jungkook's face in both of his warm, shaking hands. What would you have done, Kuka? Tell me, what would you have done? I would have dropped everything, Jungkook cried out, a broken, agonizing sob bursting from his chest as he grabbed Taehyung's wrists. I would have sold the house. I would have cancelled the business. I would have flown across the world with you and spent every single second by your side. I know, Taeyang wept, shaking his head gently. I knew you would. You loved me so much that you would have sacrificed your entire future, your dreams, your youth, and every penny you had to try and save me. And if I died on that operating table anyway, you would have been left with nothing. No home, no company, no money, and a broken heart. Taehyung squeezed Jungkook's face, looking deeply into his dark, tear-filled eyes. I couldn't let you ruin your life for a dying man, Jungkook. Your future was too bright, so I made a choice. I decided to make you hate me. I believed that if you hated me, if you thought I was a cold, selfish traitor who abandoned you, it would hurt for a while, but eventually you would use that anger to fuel your success. You would grow up, build your company, and live a long, happy life. Jungkook fell to his knees right there on the floor of his office, burying his face in Taeyang's stomach, weeping uncontrollably. His large shoulders shook with agonizing, heavy gasps as 5 years of buried grief, misunderstood betrayal, and overwhelming love washed over him all at once. How could you? Jungkook sobbed into Taeyang's clothes, his hands clutching Taeyang's coat like a drowning man holding onto a lifeline. How could you bear that alone? How could you make me hate the only person I ever lived for? Taeyang dropped to his knees beside him, wrapping his arms around Jungkook's neck, pulling the weeping man tight against his chest. It was the hardest thing I ever did. Taehyung whispered into Jungkook's hair, kissing his temple again and again. Every word I said to you that night cut my own heart into pieces. But I would have done it 1,000 times over just to see you standing tall today. Jungkook lifted his head, his face wet with tears, searching Taehyung's eyes with raw, desperate intensity. And Switzerland? Jungkook asked, his voice raw. What happened in Geneva? The baby? Taehyung offered a small, watery, bittersweet smile. He reached out, gently wiping the tears from Jungkook's cheeks with his thumb. When I arrived at the hospital in Geneva, Taeyang explained softly, the doctors ran preliminary blood work before scheduling the craniotomy. That was when we discovered the miracle. I was 6 weeks pregnant with your child. Jungkook gasped, his eyes wide as he looked over toward the sofa where little Cookie was still quietly coloring, unaware of his parents' emotional storm. The doctors told me that undergoing brain surgery, aggressive radiation, and chemotherapy while carrying a baby was extremely dangerous, Taehyung murmured, his voice filling with a quiet, fierce pride. Tae, Jungkook breathed, horrified at the sheer risk Taehyung had taken. He was a piece of you, Kuka, Taehyung said, tears glistening in his eyes like starlight. When I had nothing left, when I was terrified and alone in a foreign land facing death, the thought of protecting your child gave me the strength to survive. Jungkook looked back at Taeyang, his heart overflowing with a love so immense, so profound, that it defied all words. I named him Jeon Kuki, Taeyang said softly, a tear trickling down his cheek. Because every time I looked at his face, I saw you. And when we finally came back, I saw you with Yujung, and I thought you had found the happiness I wanted for you. There is no happiness without you, Kim Taeyang, Jungkook said fiercely, reaching out to cup Taeyang's nape, pulling their foreheads together until their breaths mingled. There never was, there never could be. I love you, Tae, Jungkook whispered, pulling him close and pressing his lips firmly against Taehyung's in a deep, desperate, rain-soaked kiss that tasted of tears, forgiveness, and 5 years of starved affection. Don't ever leave me again, please. I won't, Taehyung whispered softly into the kiss, wrapping his arms around Jungkook's neck. I'm never leaving you again. Jungkook pulled back from the kiss, looking at his son. With trembling arms, he opened his side, inviting the little boy in. Cookie looked at Taehyung, who nodded with a tearful smile, before the little boy crawled into Jungkook's warm lap. Jungkook wrapped his broad arms around both Taeyang and their son, holding them tight against his chest as the rain continued to fall outside, finally bringing peace to their long stormy sky. The morning sun spilled across the hardwood floor of the master bedroom, casting long warm strips of honeyed light over the white linen sheets. In the center of the large bed, tangled in the soft duvet, Taehyung stirred slowly. Taehyung opened his eyes, blinking softly against the bright sunlight. Beside him, sleeping deeply on his side with one heavy tattooed arm wrapped securely around Taehyung's waist, was Jungkook. His dark hair was a messy nest of bedhead, his jaw relaxed, and a tiny contented pout rested on his lips as he let out soft rhythmic breaths. Even after months of living back together in their new, sunlit house, Taeyang found himself staring at Jungkook's quiet, sleeping face with a sense of wonder, still pinching himself to make sure it wasn't a wonderful, fragile dream. Taehyung smiled softly, reaching out a slender hand to gently brush a stray strand of hair from Jungkook's forehead. He traced the smooth line of his jawline down to his throat, where a distinct, rosy mark sat near his collarbone. A faint blush dusted Taehyung's cheeks. He instinctively pulled the collar of his own silk pajama shirt higher, well aware that he bore matching flush red marks along his own neck from the sweet, passionate hours they had spent in each other's arms long after the house had gone quiet last night. Suddenly, the bedroom door clicked open with a tiny, cautious creak. A tiny figure in light blue bear patterned pajamas tiptoed into the room. Cookie was clutching his trusty plush bunny under his arm. On his quiet little bare feet, he scampered over to Taehyung's side of the bed, resting his tiny chin on the mattress edge. Appa, Cookie whispered loudly, his small voice vibrating with morning excitement. Is it time for waffles yet? Taehyung let out a soft, breathy chuckle, shifting carefully so as not to wake the sleeping giant beside him. He reached over the side of the bed, scooping Cookie up under his arms and lifting the little boy onto the mattress. Good morning, my sweet bear, Taeyang whispered against Cookie's soft cheek, kissing him repeatedly until the little boy giggled and squirted in his arms. Did you sleep well? Mm-hmm. Cookie nodded enthusiastically, sitting cross-legged between them. He patted Taeyong's cheeks with his tiny warm hands before turning his curious gaze toward his sleeping father. Jungkook stirred at the sound of the soft giggles. He slowly opened one eye, a wide, sleepy grin instantly spreading across his face the moment he saw his son and his lover sitting in the sunlight beside him. Good morning, my little troublemaker, Jungkook mumbled, his morning voice deep and raspy. He reached out, his long arms snaking around Cookie's waist and pulling the little boy down onto his chest, burying his face in Cookie's neck to tickle him with raspy blows. Ah, Daddy, stop! It tickles! Cookie squealed with laughter, squirming against Jungkook's chest while beating his tiny hands against his dad's broad shoulders. Taehyung watched them with a soft, affectionate gaze, resting his head on his hand as he leaned on his elbow. Cookie, sitting between their crossed legs, suddenly stopped wiggling, his sharp, dark eyes so eerily similar to Jungkook's fixed intently on Jungkook's throat. Then his eyes drifted over to Taehyung's neck where the silk pajama shirt had slipped slightly, revealing the pale skin beneath. The little boy tilted his head, his brow furrowing in deep, serious concentration. Daddy? Appa? Cookie asked, raising a tiny index finger and pointing right at the red mark on Jungkook's neck. What is that? Jungkook blinked, catching Taehyung's eye for a split second. A cheeky, mischievous smirk immediately began to curve at the corner of Jungkook's lips. That? Jungkook said smoothly, trying to sound completely serious. Well, Cookie, a very special bug visited our room last night while you were fast asleep. Taehyung's eyes widened slightly, his cheeks heating up as he swatted Jungkook's knee beneath the duvet. Jungkook, don't. A bug? Cookie gasped softly, his big eyes widening with genuine concern. He leaned closer to inspect the mark on Taehyung's neck as well. It bit Mama too. Look, red spots. Yep, Jungkook nodded solemnly, placing a hand over his heart. It was a very dangerous, very fierce mosquito, but not just any regular mosquito, a romantic mosquito. Cookie tilted his head further, processing the strange new word. What does romantic mean? It means. Jungkook leaned down, whispering conspiratorially into Cookie's ear while sneaking a playful glance at Taehyung, that the mosquito only bites people who love each other very, very much. And when it bites, it leaves a little love mark behind so everyone knows they belong together. Taehyung hid his face in his hands, laughing softly in disbelief, while his neck burned bright crimson. He reached over and playfully pinched Jungkook's thigh. Jungkook, stop teaching our son such silly nonsense. Jungkook threw his head back and laughed a rich booming sound filled with unbridled joy that echoed off the warm walls of their bedroom. Cookie looked between his laughing parents, a bright, pure smile lighting up his little face. He didn't quite understand the adult joke, but the overwhelming happiness in the room was contagious. He scrambled onto his feet on the soft mattress, jumping up and down happily. I want a romantic mosquito to bite me too, Cookie declared proudly, throwing his arms up, so I can have love marks like Daddy and Mama. Taehyung burst out laughing, pulling Cookie down into his lap and smothering his chubby cheeks with kisses. No way, mister. You are far too young for romantic mosquitoes. Come on, let's go downstairs before your daddy fills your head with any more crazy ideas. Waffles. Cookie cheered, scrambling off the bed and running on his little feet toward the door. Strawberry waffles. Go wash your hands first, sweetie, Taehyung called out after him. Okay, Mama. Cookie's little footsteps pitter-patter-pattered down the hallway, followed by the soft clatter of his bathroom door. Once the hallway went quiet, the bedroom settled back into a soft, serene silence. Jungkook didn't get up immediately. Instead, he reached out, wrapped his hands around Taehyung's waist, and gently pulled him back down until Taehyung was lying comfortably against his chest once again. Hey, Jungkook whispered, his voice dropping into a tender, gentle murmur. Taehyung turned his head on the pillow, looking into the deep dark eyes he had loved for more than a decade. Hey yourself, did I tell you today how much I love you? Jungkook asked, his thumb gently stroking the soft curve of Taehyung's cheekbone, tracing the small faint surgical scar hidden beneath his hair with absolute reverence. Not yet, Taehyung murmured softly, leaning into the touch. You were too busy talking about mosquitoes. Jungkook smiled, a gaze so full of warmth and absolute devotion that it made Taehyung's heart leap in his chest just like it did when they were teenagers. I love you, Taehyung, Jungkook said quietly, every word heavy with the truth of the long, painful road they had walked to get here. Thank you for coming back to me. Thank you for giving me Cookie. Thank you for fighting so hard to stay alive. Taehyung felt a sweet, warm tear spill over his lashes, but it was a tear born purely of profound peace. He reached up, cupping Jungkook's jaw, and brought their lips together in a soft, slow, deeply comforting kiss that carried no lingering ghost of the past, only the quiet certainty of their shared future. I love you too, Kook, Taehyung whispered against his lips, pulling back just enough to smile. Now, pay up. You promised our son strawberry waffles, and I know for a fact we are out of strawberries. Jungkook groaned dramatically, flopping his head back onto the pillow, though the bright grin never left his face. Can I at least get a proper goodbye kiss before I run to the grocery store? Taehyung laughed softly, shaking his head with affectionate exasperation as he leaned down to press another sweet kiss to his husband's lips. Honestly, Taehyung teased gently, his heart overflowing with a bliss so complete it felt like a dream. It feels like I have to look after two kids instead of one. And you wouldn't have it any other way, Jungkook grinned, kissing Taehyung's nose before swinging his legs out of bed. Outside their window, the morning sun climbed higher into the sky, bathing their home in endless, unwavering light. The long night was finally over, and their life together had only just begun.